Hey everybody, welcome back to Our Healer, Our Protector with Ryan and Lisa. We have Brian Bogert today out of Scottsdale, Arizona visiting us. Welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here. It's been fun getting to know you guys for a few minutes beforehand. So
Yeah, I love it. It's pretty special as transition different episodes over time and space, and knowing your story and kind of one being an Arizona boy, born and raised, it sounds like,
yeah,
and everything. Some of the stuff you maybe went through, in your childhood
Yeah.
with some of the trauma that you would have went through. Did you ever face, kind of that, I suspect, of where people weren't so kind?
I would say I still do occasionally.
Yeah.
It doesn't register for me in any way the same as it used to. To give a little bit of context, because I think it is somewhat important too. I mean, at 7, I was run over by a truck. My left arm was torn from my body, right? I'm given the compressed version, but there was a lot that took place. And at first, we were overwhelmed with kindness because I remember feeling overwhelmed. Why me? What happened to me? And then everybody in the ICU would start coming up to us and saying, "We're so sorry for what happened to you. We're so sorry for what happened to you. How can we help you?" And then come to find out that their kid's laying in the hospital bed next to me with a terminal illness and doesn't know if they're going to live for another 30 days. Yeah. Right. My life at that moment is secure. And that was like a pretty strong perspective shift for me, even to the point of kindness for me. It's like, oh, okay. Like I'm pretty fortunate. And that was one of the reasons and moments that I learned not to get stuck by the things that had happened to me, but instead get moved by what I could do with them. But then I would come out of the hospital and I focus a lot on questions with people, because I think that questions are one of the ways we can guarantee we don't get stuck. Because when we ask questions or more questions of ourselves or of each other, we get options and opportunities, right? Then we can make new choices and can create those changes. And recently I was wondering why I cared so much about questions, and it hit me. It's because the amount of people who used to stare and never ask. And then it goes a layer deeper, right? It's like, okay, then the ones who had courage to ask, they'd come up and they'd ask me, and they were expecting me to say, well, I was a 7-year-old boy. I jumped off a jungle gym. I was racing my brother on our bikes. And I'd look them deadpan in the eye and say, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn off. So then the second layer of this, and that conditioned elements for me, is that then they would pause and they'd turn to my parents for validation, which told me what? They didn't believe me. Right? So now not only they overcame the courage to this, but now they don't believe me, my own truth that I'm wearing, living, and existing in, and I'm not even being believed. Okay. Then once they believed me, probably another large portion of those would then say something like this. So why were you running through the parking lot? Placing blame.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden I'm in a position of fault, and it had nothing to do with anything I did. In fact, I was completely in the right. It was a complete accident. Right. And then the last layer was they would then view me through their lens of what they'd be capable of if they were in my situation, immediately limiting me and telling me all the things I was going to do. And so when I look at like the depth of being kind, meeting people where they are, sometimes it does just start with a question. Yeah. But it also really started to help me realize how often people write their own narratives where we don't make ourselves clear. And at the end of the day, like, I think loving first and showing up with kindness and an open heart is one of the fastest ways to connect and build trust. And it's deep in the frameworks that we teach. But I faced a lot of it early and was bullied and teased, and yet I personally wouldn't change any of it from my own story.
Yeah, I mean, it's powerful testimony to think. I suffer from PTSD from, being in the military and all the years I spent in the Middle East and Iraq and Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia. And that's something, that like you can't see, those wounds, right? The survivor's guilt and so forth. And so I can't imagine at 7 years old having to go through that and then to be questioned over it, to such a degree. But no, like for both of us, with Lisa being the nurse and me being an ex-soldier, is that healer protective side of how the facets work with everything, and knowing that it was just strengthening you for other things that you were going to go through in life. And as you move forward with some of it, both Lisa and I coming from divorced pasts, something that we wanted to probably talk about is, maybe some relationship, trials and tribulations that you've been through, or any examples to help our audience know that, if we fight, not the fight in the way of we're talking about, this way, but fight for that relationship that we're in. I know for myself, it was certainly one of those that, you don't want to give up, we don't surrender, kind of thing. Like, as part of the military, we're, very offensively focused. Just, what was that like, over the years and different things, and what you could use to help others?
It's a great question, and there's lots of components that we won't have time to cover. So I'm going to hit the really top of the wave here. At the end of the day, I did feel the need to fight for almost everything in my life, right? And I needed to prove to myself, I needed to prove to others. It shaped a lot of my mindset even early on, because I was like, well, if I'm mentally tough, I can do anything, right? And I did. What it also did was it caused me to learn to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which meant it was always contingent upon what I did instead of who I was. And there's a lot of that is an underpinning of things that were truly hidden for years, at least to me. Right. And so it wasn't until I was probably 27 that I realized all the shame I'd been dealing with. Right. Like, I was a performer. I was crushing it. I was good. Our business at the time was 10 million. I had everything I thought I ever wanted. Right. But yet my bank account was full and I found myself empty. Right. And, I've often said for years that I'm a husband and father first. I almost always lead with that when people ask me to tell them who I am or what I do. Right. Because I have said that for years, but I was not always congruent. And by the way, I've always been a good husband and father, right? Like, and comparatively, like, stack me up against anybody, I feel very confident about my position. However, there are things and demons that hide from us for years. I call it the trash from our past, right? It's the emotional triggers, behavioral patterns, and environmental conditions that cause a set of beliefs and cellular memory that literally our lives only further validate. Right? These like deep needs to defend things, to protect ourselves. Right. And we faced all that in our marriage. And my wife wanted me to leave our last business, not because it was horrible, but because she knew that I wasn't chasing all of me and they didn't have 100% of me. It started with this idea of being able to help people get to the core of who they were. And it was about 10 months after I left that we sat on our back patio, and she went on to tell me that things I'd done, ways I'd showed up, some of which still existed, had caused a pattern that caused her to lose who she was. The person I care about most on this planet, I'm having an opposite effect on. I realized then, and this was about 35 at the point, that it wasn't just shame. And here's the thing, anger is a secondary emotion. It's not primary. It's big energy designed to push everyone and everything away from you. But it would show up in moments like this. And she'd say, hey, honey, what do you want to do with the kids this weekend? But my shame and my anger would cause me to hear this. Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently, so what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend? To which point, of course, I'm going to defend the shit out of that. Right? I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last few days to show her I'm a good husband and father. That wasn't even what she asked.
I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What you are talking about is like what we all need in our relationships. When you talked about, like, I felt as though I always put my family first, and what I could do for my family was work and provide for us. And I always needed affirmation too. And going back to childhood, like, to prove yourself, I thought if I worked and kept working and provided for my family, and that would show my love.
Yeah.
And I missed out on things too.
But you didn't know any different either. And that's the thing, is you also were doing it from a place of good intent, because that's what you believed you needed to do, or how it was going to provide the value. And so that's the dynamic of this that's always interesting, and that's really what the core of this kind of came down to for me, is not just the deepest of the philosophies of what I teach, but it reinforced that the world will never judge you based on your intent. It will only ever judge you based on what your words, actions, and behaviors communicate to the world, whether you think that they're communicating something or not. And the issue with that is that there's two layers to it, right? I mean, I teach that we all seek and desire four things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel protected. We all want to feel seen and understood. And we all want to feel connected. These last two are the things we want the most, especially from our most intimate partner.
Right. Right?
Like, we just want to melt, like, be completely safe all the time. But if we're not safe and protected, what do? We protect ourselves. Yeah. Right. And I always give this analogy of a 35-gallon black trash bag. It's like, if you put that up in front of you, then the question becomes, how could you properly expect your spouse, your kids, anybody to see who you are, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, your heart, your intent, your soul, your desires, your boundaries, your value, your worth, delivered through this opaque force field? And then let's just say you're able to lower your own. You probably still have another layer of force field to get through because the other person's still holding their own. So it further dilutes the message. There's 2 layers of disconnection between almost all of us all the time. Because what did I hear? I heard something I needed to defend. Why? Because I was never believed, right? I was blamed for so many things. I'm a great husband and father. But I'd have moments of reaction that would say otherwise. I'd have reactions that would create damage. Just a few months before this was the first time I remember, and it was devastating for me, seeing fear in my son's eyes. He was 5, and it had nothing to do with him. And so I went from being in the best place in my marriage I thought I'd ever be to literally not knowing if I'd be married for another 30 days. But the levels at which I had to go inward in order to accomplish that is ultimately what saved our marriage. I mean, I was able to tap into one of the core frameworks and lessons I used to teach is this idea of embracing pain to avoid suffering. Something in here was broken still, right? I wasn't hearing things clearly. So we had to set up all these rules and parameters like in how we were communicating and engaging, and we weren't perfect. But in that moment, I had a choice, right? I could have reacted like I always did when she tried to tell me that I was angry. And I would have probably guaranteed my fate. But I was fortunate enough in the way that she communicated it that day or the timing of when I was ready to finally hear it. I chose to do something different. So I handed everything over to my wife, my phone, everything, asked her to clear my calendar for the next 10 days. And I went inward and started doing the work. And no, I did not fix it in 10 days. Nope. I'm still working on it. But I made a promise to her that day that I was going to do everything in my power to ensure the negative effects of anger would not affect our house as a result of me again. And in the following 18 months, it happened probably 2 or 3 times. I'm human. I knew it would.
Yeah.
But the difference is that it didn't create anywhere near the damage it did in the prior periods. Repair and ownership were taken far sooner. And I often tell people that I feel like I had to eat shit for 6 months.
Yeah.
And oh, poor me, I had to eat shit for 6 months. She put up with me for over 10 years. Right? So I had to bite my tongue. I had to swallow my pride. I had to catch myself. I told you both.
Yeah.
Literally 10 days after we had that conversation, I went and I tattooed trust, surrender, breathe on my left arm because it was a moment. And I need the visual, physical reminders. I'm dense sometimes. Like I need it. And if I felt that moment of trigger, this was my stimulus. Look down. Yeah. Try to slow the time down a little bit. And you know, at the end of the day now, it's evolved to a place. I mean, it's all in the frameworks that we teach and go through. But it's, you know, if my wife says something today that, first of all, let me finish what I was saying, the 6 months. It was the end of 6 months that she paused and said, I think it's time I need to do some work.
That's wonderful.
And then it was not her supporting me to hopefully not screw it up. It was then we're walking this journey together. And from that point forward, it's been totally different. But that's when trust started to be reestablished because she felt like there was a chance, right? After 6 months of me showing her consistently that I'm doing what I say I'm going to do. But that was the lesson that I got from her dad, because when I had breakfast with them that following week, because I went and reached out to all the closest people to them, told them exactly what I wanted, full ownership and accountability. Like, nope. If I'm going to embrace pain to avoid suffering, the ultimate suffering for me is my wife and my kids not being there. I need to figure this out. But he looked at me and he said, you talk too much, show me. And I'm one of those that if you challenge me, well,
You're going to do it.
look out. Yeah.
I love everything that you said. Because in our podcast, we talk about our divorce, but we love marriage. We want people to be married. We want people to have healthy relationships. And what you and your wife's story is so good for people to hear because it takes 2 people.
It does.
And you have to look inside yourself and saying, what am I doing? I believed in marriage, and I know other people do. And I know there's people in my life that some are shocked that my kids' dad and I got a divorce because I protected my family. It wasn't for other people to know what was going on.
And that's often where we think we're operating from, as a place of protection for ourselves or for others, right? Like that's the dynamic. I didn't close the story. I think it's assumed that my wife and I are still together. However,
Yes, and
we've been together now going on 19 years, but we hid from each other unconsciously for 14, and she's only felt emotionally safe with me for about 3 years. Oh, wow. But it's also not a coincidence. We do have the best marriage, the best communication, the deepest amount of intimacy, and I mean that far beyond sex. We've reversed generational patterns in the home. My kids don't remember having an angry dad, but guess what? Do we still have moments?
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
And so that's where we've got tools now to be able to, and it's funny you use the word protect, because one of the things I teach is this concept of being a protector and connector. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's about catching myself in a moment of a trigger or reaction, right? Because almost all of that is fabricated and not real. Almost all of it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, if I know I'm getting triggered in a moment, I needed to be able to step into truth as quickly as possible. So I could just say something like, hey, babe, I just got triggered by what you said. Can you say it again? And I'm going to try to listen more neutrally. And if I can't, can we maybe pause this conversation and revisit it later so that we don't create more damage? Right? Like the goal is to create no damage. Because then you're not wasting time and energy and repair and all the shit that's in between
your
it.
imagination.
Right. But at the end of the day, that's all, I mean, even the defensiveness that I was telling you, it's all coming from a place of personal protection.
Yeah.
When we put that armor, it's because we're trying to protect ourselves. Right. But the issue is once we can't communicate all those things, the truth becomes real. Is the second we protect ourselves, we actually guarantee we're going to disconnect ourselves from the two things we want most. And the second we protect ourselves, we guarantee we're going to disconnect ourselves from who we are and what we want. And then we try to protect others. Mm-hmm. Oh, we try to protect our partners. We don't want to expose them. We want to protect our kids. But then we start putting a layer of protection in front of others, which actually double disconnects them.
Yeah. And we teach our kids that.
And it's all coming from a place of good intent.
Yes.
But here's the thing. We're conditioned in our nervous systems to protect ourselves. Why? Our nervous systems are hardwired to anticipate threat or risk to save our lives. 100 years ago, if my accident happened, I'd be dead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? I would be.
Yeah, you would be.
But that's not, and this was 35 years ago and I'm still alive. But the point is that's not what we're largely reacting to anymore. No. Right? And so we need to update our operating systems and start to realize that like, okay, nervous system regulation is a real thing. It gives us capacity. It gives us reason. It gives us the ability to regulate. Right? My HRV, my nervous system was at like 8 for over a decade and I didn't know it, even though I was tracking it. Of course I'm going to be reactionary the whole time. Mm-hmm. I'm in adrenal fatigue. I'm shot. I have nothing in the tank, right? And so there's all these factors, but what does it come down to? We're hardwired to avoid pain, to protect ourselves from risk. But it's also the very thing that keeps us disconnected as humans.
So when you say that, Brian, my disconnect and what my kids didn't understand, because I was always running at 8. I'm used to chaos. I survive in chaos of how I grew up, and
you probably still believe you need it to survive.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mechanism is I would giggle or laugh, but that was me releasing myself to protect myself, to have the conversation. But my kids thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. Like, it's either me releasing myself or anger or crying comes out. And I've had to tell my kids recently, like, whenever you saw me laugh or a smirk would go up, I was protecting myself because I had so much inside of me.
Yeah.
And nothing was a joke to me. I'm the most empathetic, emotional person. I'm a nurse. Like, but with my family, laughing would come out.
Yeah.
Or joking, or I would change the subject and joke about it because I couldn't face the pain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to suggest that anything that masks or numbs does disconnect in some way. However, I'm going to say one thing. If there's one behavior in action that actually, I think, has a reverse effect other than finding a place to reach surrender and not fighting, is laughter. Because laughter actually does change our chemistry. It changes our frequency. And so where we want to be careful is exactly what you talked about. Is if somebody thinks that it's not coming from a place to lighten the load or lighten the mood, but it's coming as disrespect or not paying attention to the environment, right? But the other side of it is that if you remember too, that sometimes humor can't be received through the other person's armor. Like my wife used to make jokes that I would have and could have laughed at if I wasn't in a complete locked up state.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, what did I need to do? React to it because I didn't know any better. Whereas today, she can come up to me and make a joke or like rip on me or tease me in the middle of a moment or call me a neurodivergent crazy person. Like, and we can laugh about it, right? Like, so laughter actually is an amazing medicine, but it's not always received and it's not always contextually additive, even though it's a protectionary mechanism.
Yeah, it was a protection mode for me growing
Yeah.
up, and I was always aware of my environment. So, and in my environment, I wanted to have people be happy, and so I would use my humor to make peace in the room, so people would divert from a conversation.
But you also adopted that as an identity, and it played out in your life, didn't it?
and it's worked out a lot of ways. I'm a great leader because of it, or I feel, as the nurse role that I play. But with my kids and the stuff that they felt growing up and heard growing up, they put up their protection.
Yep.
They will see with all these podcasts. I know my son has watched all of them, and I hope he sees by my action and my word, and like me even talking about my humor, because I just had a great conversation with him. I said, growing up, I know I laughed and joked and smiled in inappropriate times. I was trying to protect them too. So I love that you are talking about this.
When do you give yourself permission to not have to protect everyone in your life?
I don't do it very often.
I know. You deserve to, though. And I see that in you very much. And I just encourage you to recognize that, like, in some ways, the greatest protection you can give them is to actually not.
I know. It's the new let them theory. I just had a interaction with a family member, and I was going to protect them, and I'm like, no, I'm going to let them and let my own people figure out where they fit in their world.
But it was survival for you as a kid.
It was.
And it makes sense. It makes complete sense. But that's an example of how trash came out in your life, right? And here's the biggest thing you need to remember. The trash from your past is not your fault. It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it, or you start burying others in yours, which you're doing. So I would just ask you, as we're sitting here, to find a way to forgive yourself, because you've done everything from a place of good intent. And now you have an opportunity to just deepen and continue to grow.
And tell the truth. Like, in the past, I'm always a person to stick up for people. And to my kids that I love so much, I'm disappointed in myself at times because I didn't protect them in a room when people are talking about other people. I should have shut it down because I didn't agree, but I didn't want to stir the pot. So I just kept quiet.
Yeah. It's never wrong to advocate for yourself. And that's one of the things I've been trying to teach my kids as well, because it's the pattern of making ourselves quiet and small that keeps us stuck.
Yeah.
And so you did nothing wrong. You see it, you're learning, you're growing, just like all of us.
I know, we're still growing
Right.
at our age.
There's not a magic book out there.
I wish there was, though.
I
Man,
know,
I'm
right?
trying to figure out a way
For
to write one, because if I can figure that out,
and
man,
marriage.
we'll all be okay.
I love, in marriage, it's sickness and health. And I'm so proud of you and your wife and
Thank you.
what you just taught us going forward for our relationship, and people that are married or not married and starting over, what your story, that is so important, because we all have to take accountability. I take accountability in the divorce that I had. I take accountability on my part too, because we're not perfect.
Nobody is, and it's always a two-way street, right?
Absolutely. It's a 50-50. Well, no, we're out of time, and just such a pleasure having you here, Brian.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so
And,
much.
any closing words you have for our guests out there?
I just want you to remember that the trash from your past is not your fault, but you can escape yourself, you can free yourself, and you can live the life that you want. It just means you got to look inside and be honest with yourself.
Throw out the garbage. It's not your garbage to carry.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Well, thank you, Brian. Absolutely loved having you on our show. And make sure to check out Brian Bogert wherever he's at in the world, because he's doing amazing things, and continue to subscribe to both his channel and ours. And we'll see you next time. See ya.
Thank you.